Hello, everybody, and welcome into the 4-3 show. I am your host, Ryan Blank. I'm alongside Parker Dunn and Dominic Stern. Sadly, there will be no Pat Fortuna today, so no Morgantown jokes and no wit as per usual.
Well, there will be some Morgantown jokes, I can promise you that. And Ryan, you seem like you're in a much better mood today for the show, so that's good for the show's sake.
Yeah, last week was not.
It was not good timing for you.
Yeah, not at all. But we're in a much better mood today. I'm lighter on my feet. I feel great. Parker, how we doing, buddy?
Just another day, doing all right. I'm not doing bad, I guess. So
another day, another dollar.
Neutral, yeah, sure.
Okay, this week we're going to switch it up and we're going to start with the NFL. And the breaking news from earlier today, former wide receiver Vincent Jackson was found in a hotel room dead, and he is gone at the age of 38. Dom, I want to start with you because he was drafted by your former team, as I could say, in the Chargers. So go ahead and take it away.
Right, and he was a Charger during the time where I supported them because, of course, they played in San Diego. It was tough news to hear because Vincent Jackson was definitely one of the favorite and most beloved Charger players of recent time, obviously up there with Phillip Rivers, Sean Merriman, Junior Seau, and LaDainian Tomlinson. He was right there with it, and he did a lot of great work in the San Diego community. Was a very talented wide receiver. He was part of those teams that were so good but just could never get by Ben Roethlisberger, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning in the AFC. They would always beat him in the regular season, but come playoff times, and the Chargers just couldn't get it done. And that was not to Vincent Jackson's fault. He was always great. Such a talented wide receiver. Could go up and get the ball, could run by you, could break your ankles on a route. He was just an incredible wide receiver, and he did a lot of great work for the San Diego community. Even after he got sent to Tampa Bay, and after he retired, did a lot of great work in the San Diego community, a lot of charity stuff. So it's really tough news to hear this morning. A man gone too soon, and certainly a San Diego sports legend. So thoughts are with his family. We hope they're doing okay because this was tough news for someone who didn't even know him.
Yeah, I mean, it's always unfortunate to hear news like this, especially for a great player in him, one that was so young. I mean, 38 years old is really young to pass away no matter what the circumstances are. So you always feel for their family members, friends, anyone who knew him at any point in their lives. You definitely send your prayers their way in a time like this. But, I can't speak quite as much about him and the accolades he has quite as much as Dom, of course, as a fan watching him play growing up. But as a football fan, knowing who Vincent Jackson was, a very good receiver. He was a 3-time Pro Bowler. He had some very good seasons for those teams that did have some very good offenses over there in San Diego. So definitely familiar with what he's able to do on the field in that regard, and that as well as Tampa Bay. And I know a lot of football fans, anyone who watched the game growing up knows what he was able to do. So it's really unfortunate to hear news like this, and all we can do is wonder what the cause of his death must have been.
Yeah, this is such sad news. I remember watching him twice a year when the Chiefs would go against the Chargers. And this was a player, like Parker said, 3 Pro Bowls, had over 9,000 career receiving yards, and 57 touchdowns. He had a great career. And I read about this earlier, that he had checked into a hotel room on January 11th and had been staying there for over a month. And then a few days ago, I think it was February 10th, his family had reported him missing. And then he was located 2 days later, and his body was found by a housekeeper on Monday. And police say there were no signs of trauma, but all you want to hope is that there was no foul play involved, and that it's just such sad news. My prayers are with the entire family and hope they can get through this. Next up, let's turn this into a better turn, maybe for J.J. Watt, as he's out of Houston. He requested to be released, and it was granted as the Texans continue to start their rebuild. What do you guys think of J.J. Watt's release, and where do you guys think he could end up?
Well, it's incredible that the Houston Texans weren't able to get any value for J.J. Watt. It's just showing how much of a dysfunctional organization the Houston Texans are, because as we all know, J.J. Watt, one of the greatest defensive players ever in NFL history, and he's not too far out of his prime. He's not in it anymore. I don't think anyone's going to disagree with that statement, but he's still one of the best defensive players in the NFL. 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. He's only one of 3 guys to ever do that. Lawrence Taylor and Aaron Donald joined him in that category this year. So, surefire Hall of Famer. He's paid a lot of money because he deserves it. And now he's going to be a free agent. He's going to make some defense very happy. Possible landing spots. Well, I think Green Bay is a clear fit because he did go to Wisconsin. But I think that they don't necessarily need him given the fact that their defensive line is already pretty solid. Same with Pittsburgh to play with his 2 other brothers, TJ and Derek Watt. But once again, already have a good defense. I'm not necessarily sure. He could go to Jacksonville. They have a ton of cap space, and they're looking to get better on the defensive side of the ball because they're pretty pathetic on that end last year. So I think that's definitely a landing spot. It's going to be expensive, and you're probably going to want to sign him for multiple years considering that he's still got some years left in him. But I just find this super interesting. I'm glad that he's moving on from Houston because they don't deserve him. So it's good for him.
Yeah, I mean, that's wherever he goes, he's going to get a good amount of money because he still has some good years left in him. I think his best football is in all likelihood behind him, not just from an age perspective or how long he's been in the league, but just the toll that his body's taken. I mean, he's a guy that over the last couple of years started to kind of take a toll both physically and mentally, and it wasn't easy for him to always stay on the field. So I think that when you take that into consideration, it's going to affect how many years he's going to be given on any given contract that he does receive. He's going to hear a lot of phone calls, and a lot of teams are going to be interested because his talents are definitely well-deserved. A lot of teams are going to want what he brings to the table because although it's not at his peak and what he once used to be, he's still going to put a lot of fear in offenses because he is that guy. He's one of the best to ever do it, like Don mentioned, and whoever gets him is going to get an immediate impact player, and that goes a long way. To get a veteran like him with such a high football IQ and just such an absolute monster off the edge, I think that there's so much value that goes with him at this point in his career, even today. So I don't really know who I would speculate is going to go for him. He's going to be a team that has a fair amount of cap to work with and is trying to work on their defense. The ones that he mentioned, I know that the Steelers one was fun because, of course, his brothers, TJ and Derek, that would be something interesting to have a trio. I actually made like a joke. It's like, well, this is LeVar Ball's dream in the NFL. Should it play out? But all jokes aside, I don't know where he's going to go. I haven't given it that much consideration, but whoever decides to win that sweepstakes and get him is going to have a hell of a player.
Yeah, like you guys said, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, one of 3 to ever do so. And this is a guy, when he was in his prime, he was unstoppable. And then injuries started to hit up. His body takes a toll. But getting a guy like J.J. Watt makes your defense just takes him to another level. He is still one of the best defensive players in the game. He is still a terrific leader. He's a terrific pass rusher. What else can you need from on a defensive point than J.J. Watt? And I know ever since 2018 when he was a first-team All-Pro, he's only had 9 sacks total since then. But still, this is a guy that you can expect to give it his all every single game, and he's going to attract coaches in the game plan and on the offensive line because once he gets going, he cannot be stopped. As for a couple teams that I could really see going for him, one of them I think is the Titans. I think they could be moving on from Jadeveon Clowney and try to find someone new, and that could be J.J. Watt. Also, you have to think about guys like the Bills who want to get that next step up. Green Bay and Pittsburgh are the 2 most obvious ones because of his connections. Pittsburgh because of his brothers, and then Green Bay because he's from Wisconsin. So there's those obvious fits, I would say, but you don't know where he's going to end up. But where he's going to end up, but that defense is getting a big boost by adding a guy like J.J. Watt. Next up, I want to do something fun because it's the end of NFL offseason, so why not? If you guys could think of any, who are some surprising players that could be cut from their teams this offseason?
Ezekiel Elliott.
Explain.
Why? He's not good. He's overpaid. Their backup's better than him. Running backs don't matter. And do you need me to continue on why the Dallas Cowboys should at least consider cutting Ezekiel Elliott?
continue. I want to hear this fully.
So it was very clear from the get-go that Ezekiel Elliott was a good running back. No one was going to deny that. Coming out of college, it's when you want your running backs to be good. And he got the beneficiary of running behind a very good Ohio State offensive line in college, as all Ohio State and all Alabama and those running backs get to do. He comes into Dallas, and he gets a very good offensive line, and he tears the league apart. And everyone flips out. Everyone's like, oh, feed Zeke, feed Zeke, feed Zeke. And, the stats say he was really good. But that's cool and all. But then comes contract time. He goes to Cabo, all that crap. He comes back, was never anywhere near the same player. He's never really broken tackles. He normally just runs through holes and then does feed Zeke. He falls forward. I will give him that, but that's because he's fat. And then they also have not as good of an offensive line anymore. Travis Frederick retired. Tyron Smith's been hurt. La'el Collins and Zach Martin are still there, but that's only half of what once was an elite offensive line. And you see the production just go down dramatically. And he's also fumbled more. Now he's paid a crap ton of money. And it's just been a complete disaster. So if the Cowboys were smart, they would consider cutting Ezekiel Elliott. It's probably not going to happen just because of contract implications, but they should do it.
Parker, do you have anyone?
Yeah, I mean, at first, I really didn't know who I was going to pick for this. I mean, there's some names that come to mind, I guess, just based off of teams looking to maybe trade for certain players and replace positions. But one that immediately popped into my head when starting to actually think about it was Jurrell Casey. With the Broncos, we saw them cut A.J. Boye after just 1 year with the team. He was injured for a majority of the season, and overall it was not a success. They did not get out of him what they were hoping to when they acquired him for that fourth-round pick. Of course, it was just a fourth-round pick. They didn't give up much to get him from Jacksonville, as it was a fire sale over there. They were trying to get rid of just about every old piece to that 2017 defense, and he was one of them. So I think that Jurrell Casey over there, the former Titan, who they also acquired for very minimal, I think that they could look to get rid of him as well, because they saw, that he's a guy that is very good, but they didn't need him on that defense because they had a ton of injuries. He was one of them. He tore his bicep and was out for the remainder of the year. He only saw a very limited amount of snaps in a couple games. So I think that they could explore other options. They've already gone ahead and tried to sign other defensive linemen, and they know that the guys that they had behind him played very well. They stepped up big and were a relatively good defense, all things considered, with all those injuries. So I think that he's a veteran that's set to make $24 million over the next 2 years with the team. And I think that they could explore that. The cap hit makes things interesting, like all these cuts, but I do think that he is one of those veterans that could be released as well.
My first guy, I got to think, is Janoris Jenkins of the Saints. That team is in cap hell right now. And he's set to be paid $10 million next year. They could save over $11 million just by cutting him. And I think that he's not a huge necessity to that defense. He's over the hill in his career. He's now going to be, I think, 33 at the start of next season. And I think it would make sense for them to let go of him and see what they could get if they were to cut him and look to sign someone else with that freed up money.
I also think that Cam Jordan of the Saints could be a cut candidate. And he's paid a lot of money, and he deserves that money because he's a really good player. But at the same time, they could cut him, save some money, and try and bring him back on a different deal.
Exactly.
Or they could restructure the deal. Like you said, the Saints are just in a terrible cap situation. They tried to go all out these past 2 years to win a championship, and it just hasn't happened because Sean Payton's an overrated head coach. And they just haven't been able to get it done, and now it's going to bite them in the butt, which is fine. They went all out to try and win a championship. That's what you have to do when you're in that spot. It just didn't work out, and now they're going to have to find their way out of it. But we've seen teams like the Chiefs and the Rams finesse their way out of cap situations. Theirs is far worse than either of our teams, Ryan. So
yeah,
it's possible, but I think that Cam Jordan could also be a cut candidate, or they could just restructure his deal.
I have another guy, and it's Jimmy G.
Yeah,
if they can find a quarterback, I would cut him. Because here's the thing. He's set to get $24 million as his base pay this year. His cap hit is over $26 million, and they would save over $24 million. by cutting him. It's only like $2 million in dead cap. If they can find a quarterback, I would cut him right away. Why have that contract? It makes no sense. But it's dependent on if they can get that quarterback.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, go.
Just
Go ahead,
one
Parker.
thing with like the 49ers and what John Lynch has done, especially with Jimmy G, is they like to backload those contracts. So they want to push a lot of that money back, especially when they had that Super Bowl window when they did make it and face the Chiefs. They were able to be very flexible with the other players that they had, especially on that defense. And now it's kind of hurting them. It's definitely not an ideal situation to have to pay all this money because it was great at the time. And it seemed like they were very flexible. They can go after certain guys, but now it becomes a lot more difficult with all that money that is going to become dead cap, which definitely makes a team like that a little bit hesitant to go ahead and dump all that.
Right, and it all depends on how they evaluate Jimmy Garoppolo because, as we all know, he's been certainly better than C.J. Beathard and Nick Mullins, and he led them to the Super Bowl. Obviously, the defense was the anchor of that team, but Garoppolo played extremely well that year behind a much better offense than what it was last year. And he, of course, was out for a significant amount of the season. And, of course, they weren't playing well without him. So it's going to be interesting because, like you said, they almost lose nothing with cutting him. But at the same time, you're also rolling the dice on going out and getting someone else and putting them in that offense. So I don't know what they're going to do. Certainly a possibility. From everything I've seen, I think they're going to move on from him. I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's what it seems like is going to happen.
Yeah. I have a Chief that I think could be a very surprising cut.
Chris Jones.
No.
Oh.
Tyrann Mathieu. Cut him and bring him back on a new deal. His cap hit is $19 million. They can't afford that. They can't at all. And I love Tyrann Mathieu. I want him to be a Chief. You guys know how I've expressed them to give him a contract extension. I would cut him and tell him, the only reason we're cutting you is to give you a longer-term deal to where the cap hit isn't as large. Also, I think that for the Chiefs, Chris Jones is another topic, but I think they're just going to try to restructure him. That's how I see that playing out. Plus, the dead cap with Chris Jones' deal is too bad. But that was actually a good pick, though, Dom. You guys have anybody else that you think could be cut this year that could be a shocking move?
No, not that I think of.
I have one and that I'm hesitant to say because of the guy sitting to the left of me. So don't get mad, Parker. Von Miller.
I mean, that I wouldn't want that as a fan for what he's done, but that's not something that would necessarily shock me. I mean, he's set to make a ton of money because he signed the highest paid defensive player contract in NFL history not so long ago after that Super Bowl run. So should they want to try and relieve themselves some of that cap and focus their attention more severely on guys like Justin Simmons, who are younger players who are of more value, that would make some sense. Do I think that's necessarily going to happen? No, I wouldn't place the chips. I wouldn't go all in on that happening, but I definitely think like all these situations that we're mentioning, it's definitely a possibility for a variety of different reasons.
Okay, I'm glad you didn't think that was outrageous because that's possible.
I don't think it's outrageous at all. I don't think any of these are. I don't think most of them are very likely, but there's definitely that chance.
I think the most likely one out of all those is Janoris Jenkins because he just doesn't bring a ton of that defense anymore. All right, let's get into the one topic we have for NCAA football. Gus Malzahn is back.
And so are the UCF Golden Knights, baby.
UCF. 5-year deal. What do you think, Dom?
I love it. I love this hire. I'm not entirely sure why Auburn fired him after all he did there was win. And he won them a national championship. It was the last BCS national championship, I believe, 2013 or 2014. I'm not sure on the exact year, but it was with wait, no, he didn't win it. No, he led them to the national championship where they lost to Florida State. Excuse me. But that team was fun. And his teams did really well outside of that. I mean, they were one game away from going to the college football playoff when they lost to Georgia, who, of course, lost to Alabama in the national championship game. They had been to a bunch of Power Six or Group of Six or New Year's Six bowls, and all the teams did was win. They consistently beat Alabama. I think they've beat Alabama more times since Malzahn has been there than any other program. Maybe Ole Miss is right there, as I know Hugh Freeze beat them a couple times, but Gus Malzahn was able to beat them, and it didn't make much sense. And so for UCF to lose their head coach and their AD to both Tennessee, and then to land a hire like this, I think it's a really good hire. It's going to be interesting. Is Malzahn going to be able to recruit in the state of Florida like he has been able to get good recruits at Auburn? Because we all know that he's still in that southeast area of the country, so he knows the schools, the high school coaches, and places to go get athletes. And it's going to be interesting to see, can you bring athletes to come to Orlando to play college football? Because I think that should be not too difficult for him. And I think that UCF could be in a very good spot to still be a power team in the American Athletic Conference, because they've been super good as of late. And I think the UCF could still be a very good program. The national champs.
Yeah,
it's funny because UCF beat Auburn to become national champs.
Yeah. So I do think it's a very good hire. I mean, Gus Malzahn is one of the better coaches in college football. His resume speaks for itself, primarily at Auburn. He's a guy that led that program to what it is now, and a lot of winning took place when he was at the helm. And I think that this is a very good move by UCF. They lost their athletic director and their head coach all in a matter of weeks. So I think that it's a great bounce back from them to get a coach like that, because it's not every day that there's such great coaching opportunities or candidates out there that you can swoop in on. So for a program like that in a smaller conference, to be able to bring in a guy like that who knows how to win and trying to help a talented group of football players in a program that has been on the rise in the last couple of seasons, I'm excited to see how that works out for them going down the road. It's a 5-year deal, and I think in those 5 years we can definitely see a little bit more growth and see how far he can really take this team, especially when it comes to recruiting, like you mentioned. I think that could play a huge factor as far as him enticing some of those players over there in the South, especially in Florida.
This is a terrific hire. He has the track record. In his first season at Auburn, he went to the national championship. He had a total record of, I believe, 68-35.
In the SEC.
Yeah. I don't know why they fired him. It didn't make sense to me.
Well, they got, I forget his name, but they got the Boise State head coach who's really good.
Yeah, they've got a great head coach coming in, but Malzahn just seemed like the right coach for that team. But I think he's a perfect fit for UCF, because if you remember, after he got fired, he said he had no plans to coach this upcoming season. UCF opens up, he becomes interested, and now he can run that fast-paced offense to where he can be the same coach that he was when he was that successful with Auburn. So I think this is a great hire. I think UCF is still going to be a team that's going to be competitive, keeps putting out noticeable seasons to where they can reacclaim themselves as national champions. So I think it's a great hire. Let's get into our pick'em standings for college basketball. Yeah, I don't want to talk about it still. But first place, yeah, Dom, 27-20.
Just built different, boys.
I don't. No, I don't like that at all. Don't like that. Parker's in second at 26-21. Pat is still in third at 16-14. And then there's me in last at 25-22. I am tired of this. Why couldn't Pat give us picks from the week prior that we did by ourselves?
Well, who knows? He could have done really well in those, and he could have been in first. Because the gap is very thin right now at the moment. We're all right around that 55% on pick success rate.
It's just, I can't do it. Can't take this win percentage. Can't take it.
It's just it's funny because like with Pat's picks, like
he's so random with them too.
He's random, but like literally, this is how college basketball is, and this is how the best brackets ever do. Like, because like every year we all make brackets, of course, and we know more than the average fan, and we're gonna try and showcase that. Like I always try to show my friends, all right, I'm gonna have the better bracket of the group. You just don't know what's gonna happen, and like the regular season is no exception, and like Pat's living by that. So he's making some random picks for random reasons that go beyond the court, but hey, they're working for the most part. So that's the way it goes.
I hate that I'm losing to Pat of all people.
And the reason why you're losing to him for certain games certainly doesn't help.
God. And then he takes the joke and then pins it against me, and he's always successful with it.
Exactly. Yeah. That does not help the situation.
I've said it for a long time now. There's one man that lives in my head, and he takes up a lot of room. Just because looking at him, it's Pat. I don't know why, and I want him out, but I don't think I'll ever be able to. All right, let's get into our picks for this week.
I have his picks, by the way.
You do? You have his picks?
Yeah, and I have his reasoning, too.
Which
is the best part.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and go to Wednesday. First game, number 12, Oklahoma at number 9, Texas. Give Pats first.
Pat's going Boomer. That's the way he was always going to go. It's his team. He went away from them this weekend. He said he will never do that again. So he's going to pick with Oklahoma. And I'm going to stick with them as well. Very impressive win. I'm going to give actual reasoning why. A very impressive win at West Virginia this weekend. Double overtime victory. Austin Reeves was absolutely incredible. They went to Morgantown, and they came out with a dub. And someone is familiar with doing that on the show. And the Oklahoma, man, they did it. Kansas couldn't, but Oklahoma could. And for that reason, I'll pick them over Texas here. They're going to go on the road to Austin and win.
So, going on the road and beating a team like Texas is not going to be easy. Both teams have won their last 2 games. Texas is kind of picking it up a little bit after that Oklahoma State loss. But I just don't want to take them in this kind of game. I think Oklahoma is still overall playing better as of late. Their longer stretch of games, I like what they've been able to do. And with Texas, I feel like Andrew Jones has been incredible this year, and he has to do so much for them to win these games against these top opponents. So I'm not going to go with Texas on this one. I got to go with Oklahoma as well.
This is tough. Oklahoma came off a huge win. Austin Reeves was exceptional in that game against West Virginia. I'm going to go Oklahoma in this one, but I think it's going to be an extremely close game. I think it's going to probably be one of the best games of the week. Next up, our very own Sun Devils travel to California to take on number 17 USC.
Pat says forks up. He's taken the Arizona State Sun Devils, and I don't see it on that game. I have my top 25. I ranked USC at 12 this week. They're ranked number 17 in the AP poll. Wow. I don't see them going that much higher, but they've been very impressive in Pac-12 play. And part of that is because I value their wins over UCLA because I'm a big UCLA believer. They fell out of my top 25 for the first time. But I'm going to take USC. Mobley brothers have been playing extremely well. Peterson has been knocking down shots, and this team is just so much better than everyone else thought they were going to be. And I think they continue that. The game on Saturday against Arizona is going to be more interesting because Arizona is a much better team, which is shocking to say considering the preseason expectations for Arizona and Arizona State. But I'll take USC in this one.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with that as well. I think USC wins this one. The Trojans have looked really good. I mean, I was one of those guys that believed it was going to take time. Last season wasn't the year for them. Although they were good, they had Jonah Matthews, which they don't have this year, and that their guard play has suffered as a result. But Isaiah Mobley was going to be united with his brother Evan, and Evan is insane, and he's living up to every expectation possibly imagined. And this team is very legit. When you look at that front court, all you need is just mediocre guard play for them to beat some very good teams. And they steamrolled the Washington slate, and they looked very dominant against UCLA as well. So I think that this is a team that's going to continue that. They're going to take care of ASU, and I don't expect this game to be very close, to be quite honest with you.
I hate to do this, but it's not going to be forks up. It's going to be forks down on this one, for sure. It's just I don't see ASU really putting up the biggest fight against a team that's on fire. And a team that's just so dominant in the front court where ASU has nobody in the front court.
Oh, it's terrible.
So I got to go with USC.
And when these two teams met in Arizona a couple of weeks ago, USC won by 9. So now it's going to go back to the Galen Center.
Yeah, which is just – that's not what you want if you're ASU at this point, is to go on the road to a hot team. Let's move on to Thursday. Number 11, Iowa, travels to number 21, Wisconsin.
Okay, Pat's logic is that the Hawkeyes can pick up the Badgers and fly away with them. The Badgers can't do that, so he's going to take the Hawkeyes. I'm gonna agree with.
Man,
I'm gonna.
When we do a bracket show, it's going to be electric.
It will be. And then I'm gonna agree with his pick, not with his logic, of course. Iowa's offense looked much better this past week, and so did their defense as well. In Wisconsin, they put up a great first half against Michigan on Sunday, but they fell apart in the second half because they're just not that good offensively. It's funny how different these two teams are. Wisconsin's defensive-oriented and just go at a really slow pace, while Iowa, extremely offensive-oriented, the most offensive-oriented team in the country, and they just run up and down the court, chuck up threes, get the ball inside the Garza, and I'm going to take Iowa in this game. It should be a fairly decent game, though, because it's in Wisconsin, and Wisconsin's defense is going to keep them in the game, and they're much more controlled on offense, so I think they'll be able to get some more buckets, but I'll take Iowa.
Yeah, this is a game where I looked at it when I saw the rundown. I was like, I don't know, because, although I do think Iowa's the better team, they're one of the top scoring teams in the nation, and like you mentioned, they couldn't be more different than Wisconsin. Wisconsin, they go off of their defense. That's their backbone. You don't know what you can get from them from the scoring standpoint, but you know they're going to be able to play reliable defense and keep the games close. So we could get that. We could get a game where they're able to do that against a team like Iowa and Garza, or, Iowa might just shoot them off the court. So I think I'm going to go with Iowa as well on this one. That's one of those last-second flip-a-coin ones because I could see it going very differently, and I would immediately regret the decision. But I'm going to stick with Iowa and the firepower that they possess. I think it's going to be just enough to prevail against a team in Wisconsin, which doesn't have nearly the same kind of power to fire back with.
I got to go with Iowa on this one. I think Wisconsin, every sense of momentum and any sense of just feeling good was crushed on Sunday when they had a 12-point lead at halftime over Michigan and gave it away and lost by 10. I know this is Michigan and this is a top 5 team in the nation, but they shouldn't have given up a 12-point lead, let alone lose by 10. So I think that's going to have a drastic effect on them. And plus, I think Iowa, they're coming off a couple big wins, and I think that with how their offense is playing, if their shooters continue to shoot well, they're nearly unstoppable in the Big Ten. So I'm going to go with Iowa on this one. Next up, let's move on to this weekend. Saturday, number 18 Virginia Tech travels to take on the Seminoles of 16th ranked Florida State.
So first off, let's hope this game happens because Virginia Tech's game against UNC got canceled this week. We'll find out later on in the week if this game does happen. If it does, Pat will be taking Florida State because what is a Hokie? And then I will be taking Florida State as well just because they're the much better team. Both these teams are the only two teams in the ACC to have beaten Virginia this year, with Florida State's dominant win over them tonight. That was just an absolute clinic. Shout out to Parker for correctly picking that game. That moved them one game back of me. But the Seminoles, we knew they were good. They did not look good coming out of their COVID pause. And then until this game, they were absolutely killer. They've got such a dynamic team and a really good head coach who knows exactly what he's doing with his guys. He rotates his guys in and out, gets fresh minutes, so he's getting the most out of his players when they're on the court. And they're just such a dangerous team. I'll be taking the Seminoles.
Yep, Seminoles for me as well. I'm going to stick with the team from picking them last time for, I guess the game tonight that we witnessed. So they look really hot right now, and they're a team out of the ACC that is definitely going to have a chance to make some noise come tournament time. So I like them in this game. I like Virginia Tech and what they've been able to do at this point, but I have to go with Seminoles. Again, I love hearing Pat's reasoning because it makes it, I don't know, it's just funny. I don't need to question what a Hokie is. I just need to know that Florida State's a very good team and they're playing at home.
Florida State's the better team in this matchup, coming off a huge win over a top 10 team. So I've got to go with Florida State. Next up, UConn at number 10, Villanova.
I'm going to take Villanova. They did not look very good against Creighton, although the really good Creighton team showed up. The Creighton team that's like Final Four good, and no one's going to beat that team, not even Villanova. And it's tough to judge because UConn, they finally had a very impressive win over Xavier. They're still without James Bouknight, their best player. Pat is taking UConn because his grandfather went to UConn, so shout out to Grandpa Fortuna. He didn't clarify, so we're not going to assume which grandparent it was. But I'm going to take Villanova in this game. We still don't know if Bouknight's going to play, so I'm just going to roll the dice with Villanova. Much more experienced and much more talented team, but Bouknight would be the best player on the floor if he does come back and return.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to take Villanova on this one. That was a bad Creighton loss. I had them dropping in the rankings quite a few spots, but I think they're able to take care of business. I think that this is a game where UConn can make it competitive, but ultimately Villanova's the better team. The roster has what it takes, and, they've had a really weird season with COVID. I mean, there's plenty of teams that you could look at that have been affected one way or another, but theirs in particular. And I think that they're going to ultimately find a rhythm at some point in a game like this to bounce back and be the one to do it. So I'm going to take Villanova.
If Bouknight was playing, I would for sure play. I'd probably pick UConn, but I'm going to go with Villanova, despite them just getting ran off the floor by Creighton. So I'm going to go with Nova here. Next up, number 15, Texas Tech travels to Lawrence to take on number 23, KU. They're back in it, baby. They're back in the rankings.
Yeah, we knew they'd get back. They're a top 25 team in the nation. They deserve to fall out considering how much they were struggling. 100%. But that impressive win against Oklahoma State and then 2 wins against the worst team it's tough to say who's worse, Iowa State or Kansas State. But they don't have a conference win, but they both suck. But Kansas handled business against them. They beat them twice, so they deserve to get back in the rankings. I don't know if they should have jumped San Diego State, but that's a different discussion. Anyways, Pat is picking Texas Tech because he will always pick against Kansas because Ryan's favorite team is Kansas. The rent-freeness is on full display. I'll join Pat in picking Texas Tech. It's going to be a tough game. KU won in Lubbock earlier this year. That was before we got back to Arizona State. So that was a long time ago. But I think this team is just playing much better basketball as of now. I think their offense is more explosive. Both teams can play pretty solid defense. We've seen them show inconsistencies on defense. A lot of games they play really well. In some games they just fall apart on defense. And KU's prone to the 3 ball on defense. That's where a lot of teams get them. We'll see how much of a factor that is in this game. I'll take Tech.
Yep, Texas Tech, going to keep it that way for me as well. I think in a matchup like this, Kansas has done a good job crawling back into the top 25 after falling out for a very brief absence. But I ultimately think that Texas Tech is playing better. I think that when I watch their games against some of the top opponents, they're consistently playing at a higher level. They've got some better wins on their resume. And I think now that Kansas is in the rankings again, they're going to add to that. So I think that Texas Tech takes care of business on the road.
This is how KU's week is going to go, gentlemen. They're going to start off the week by whooping Kansas State, running them off the floor by at least 25. Then, when it comes Saturday, they are going to defeat Texas Tech, and Chris Beard is going to have another tantrum where he lays on the court.
Yeah, that was awesome. I want to hear you.
I loved it.
Yes.
I loved
it. Good.
So that is how that's going to go. KU is actually playing good basketball right now. They deserve to drop out of the top 25, like I said. But now they deserve to be back in, and now they're playing good basketball. So give me the Hawks in this one. Rock chalk, baby. Final game on Saturday. West Virginia is not at home. They're on the road at Texas.
So Pat will take West Virginia because they are from Morgantown, and he will always support Morgantown, no matter what, if they are in Morgantown or if they are out of Morgantown. So he will take West Virginia and the Mountaineers. I will.
You know what?
Can't wait to see
as much as I say that kid drives me nuts, he's one of the funniest dudes I know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason he does stand up because he's funny. I will take Texas in this game. I picked against them earlier in their game against Oklahoma, but I think they come back and they get this game. Last time West Virginia went on the road to play a game in Texas, It happened to be the game in Texas Tech and Lubbock, and they ended up winning that game. I don't think that's the case this time. I will take the Longhorns. Hook 'em. Let's go, Shaka.
Yeah, similar thought process. So the thing with West Virginia last week is I went 0 for 2. I was wrong on having them win and having them lose. It was the exact opposite.
Yeah.
That's a bummer. But they don't play any other time earlier in the week. So I feel better about picking Texas for this one game. I don't think it can bite me twice. It's literally not possible mathematically. So I'm going to take Texas. I think that the thought process applies to them the same way because I did have Oklahoma beating them. So I really hope they don't pull a West Virginia because that would be very frustrating. So I'm going to take them. I hope that, honestly, that's all I have to say. I don't really have anything to add to the game. I already talked about Texas against Oklahoma. I just really pray that doesn't happen. So go Texas.
Parker, I have a question for you. Do you think West Virginia, you hate them as much as you hate Evan Ingram?
No, I have nothing against West Virginia. I mean, like I said,
He just got their games wrong.
I had them winning and losing, so it wasn't just 3 straight games I had them losing.
Yeah, he knew they'd go 1-1 that week. He just picked the wrong games.
Yeah, and Evan Ingram, if you're listening, that's kidding. Evan Ingram, that was a much more frustrating game and play in particular that he had in our pick'ems for the NFL. So absolutely not. I'm not letting him go that easy.
You're not letting him go that easy?
No.
I'm going to go with Texas in this one. Horns up, baby. Let's go, Shaka. I don't like picking West Virginia because they're just inconsistent, not because of the relevance of where they're from, but just because they're so inconsistent. And I think Texas is going to not lose 2 straight top 15 matchups in a week. Sunday, the best game of the week. Number 3, Michigan on the road at number 4, Ohio State.
Here's exactly what Pat told me. He goes, oh, wait. Tom Brady went to Michigan, and Tom Brady won the Super Bowl against Ryan's Kansas City Chiefs. So I will take Michigan.
He's actually supporting one of the teams I like? No way.
He's supporting the quarterback who has and basically stolen 2 Super Bowls from Patrick Mahomes in your Kansas City Chiefs. So these are his words. Do not shoot the messenger, Ryan. Please do not. I'm just the messenger here. I didn't have to say it, but I'm a good messenger, so I'm going to say it.
Just wait till movie night when I tackle
him.
Him? Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, cool.
Not you.
Thank you.
Hey, we're journalists. We report the news. We don't make it.
Thank you. All right. I'm actually going to pick Ohio State in this game. I think that their offense has more firepower than Michigan, and it's going to be a fantastic game. I can't miss this. I mean, obviously, I missed the second half of Michigan-Wisconsin because it was Valentine's Day. So I was
you were with Brooklyn.
I was with Brooklyn, yes.
Oh, yeah, you were at the Rainforest Cafe. How was it?
It was enjoyable. She got spooked by the elephants. It was rather entertaining. But I'm going to take Ohio State in this game. I picked them on the podcast, the other College Basketball Bonanza podcast that I do, mostly because I just didn't know how Michigan was going to look. But even though they did look impressive, I'm just going to stick with Ohio State. We put all my eggs in one basket here. Both these teams are really good. Certainly both Final Four caliber teams, but Ohio State's got a lethal offense, and I think they could do some damage here.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Michigan on this one. Not for the same reasons as Pat, obviously, for actual reasons on the court. But I am going to go with them. It's going to be such a good game. I really hope it lives up to the hype, and I hope that both teams bring everything they got because I hate when these highly anticipated matchups don't turn out very well. So hoping for that no matter what the pick ends up being. But I will go with Michigan, and I think that they've been the best for the longest stretch. Of course, they only have one loss in conference play, and do that in the Big Ten is very impressive. And they've looked so good. COVID, of course, like Villanova, broke up their season. We haven't seen the larger sample size as that of Ohio State, who has been hotter for a longer stretch of time, of course, winning 6 straight. This is a clash of 2 Titans over there in the Big Ten. It's going to be awesome. And I'm going to go with Michigan on this one. But, again, it's such a coin flip at this point. Both teams are playing basketball at the right time.
Give me the Wolverines. I think Michigan's going to win this game. I think they have as much firepower on offense as Ohio State does. And I think they're a very good defensive team as well, and they showcase that in the second half. of that game against Wisconsin. So give me the Wolverines. And that will conclude our pick'ems for this week. How you guys feeling? Confident, not confident?
Yeah, I felt confident last week, and look where that got me. So,
yeah, I was about to say it's picking college basketball games, so I'm not going to be confident naturally. I still, I like my picks. I'm not going to doubt any of them, but to say I'd be confident in them is just wrong.
Yeah, I'm not confident in these at all.
Not
at all. Not at all. I'll be honest. It's college basketball. Nothing's predictable. We all know this. Last thing.
College basketball, but the unpredictable becomes the predictable. John Rothstein, Michael Scott. I'm just kidding about the Michael Scott. That's a John Rothstein quote.
Last up for college basketball, Jalen Johnson, the star for Duke, has decided to opt out for the remainder of the season and focus on healing his foot injury and getting ready for the NBA draft. What do you guys think?
Well, there's two ways to look at this because I view Jalen Johnson as a top 5 prospect in this draft. He's certainly one of the better players in it, and he's an incredible talent. So you can look at it two ways. You can look at it as the way that, hey, listen, he's played through a pandemic, and it's come to the point where Duke isn't going to make the NCAA tournament unless they win the ACC, which is probably not going to happen. Certainly possible, but probably not going to happen. And so he's just taking safety and making sure that he's going to earn the most amount of money and go into the NBA draft as healthy as possible. Or you can look at it as the fun way, the Duke way. And say, oh, well, he's quitting on his team. He's doing the Coach K way. When it gets tough, just quit. And I think it's funny because I really could see it both ways. I personally side with the, hey, I'm a player's guy. I always have been. So I'm going to side with the fact that he's trying to do what's best for his basketball career going forward. Duke's season has been a nightmare so far this year. And he's just trying to make sure that he can go into the NBA draft as healthy as possible. You can say whatever you want about him quitting. I completely understand that perspective. But at the same time, Duke's season's been a nightmare. He's playing college basketball in the middle of a pandemic. He's at a really awesome school and just hasn't really been able to do anything about it because he's been blocked up basically in his dorm room, except for when he goes to play college basketball, when he goes to practice, when he goes to eat. So he can now enjoy the last couple of months of his college career in terms of just being a college student because he's going to go in the NBA draft and he's going to make tens of millions of dollars. So good on Jalen Johnson, but I think it's been funny seeing all the Duke haters loud and proud out there today on Twitter talking about how they quit, and it's funny.
Yeah, I mean, this decision really sums up the season Duke's had. It's been an absolute disaster. The fans have had the worst of times after experiencing so many amazing years of basketball. That was not the case with this year's Duke team, and I don't see them miraculously pulling off some upsets and winning that ACC tournament. So their season is over. They won't be playing in the postseason. But ultimately, the way I used to look at a lot of these, like with college football players opting out for big bowl games, for the longest time I used to think, I respect their decision. It makes sense, stay healthy and do what you got to do. But at the same time, it's like your team needs you. Like, come on, play that big game. But of course, we've seen some big injuries. Jake Butt's always one that comes to mind. So you see these guys, they get hurt here and there, especially, with a pandemic, with, COVID being a thing still. It definitely gives more leeway in a situation like this because, of course, you could point fingers and say, yeah, he is quitting on the team. But, he has to be cut some slack because, he could have easily just opted out of the season entirely, but he did give it a shot. And unfortunately, that shot did not hit, and that ended Duke's season. So it is what it is, and good on him for protecting his body, his wealth, and all that so that he can prepare for the draft because he's a guy that's going to be taken and he's going to play at the next level. So I respect his decision nonetheless.
This is a business decision, and I agree with it in his case. I don't usually agree with players opting out of bowl games and stuff like that because team first type person that I am. And I think that it's not the best show of your character. But when it comes to the disastrous season that Duke has had, not just on the court, but with COVID-19, you got to understand it. Who wants to be cooped up in a dorm room all year long with just being able to leave to go play basketball for a team that's struggling? So it makes sense. I understand it. Plus, he's ready to get paid. He's ready to make millions and to showcase his talents at the highest level that he can get. So I respect it, and I think for him, it's the right move. Now, in the last 8 to 10 minutes or so, we've got a couple NBA topics to go through. Anthony Davis out 2 to 3 weeks with a calf strain that came off of an Achilles injury. What do you guys think of this?
Lakers in 6. No, but in all reality, this is a devastating blow for the Lakers, at least for the time being. It seems like he's going to be out for a little over a month. He's going to not be able to play in the All-Star game, which was a good thing, if we're being completely honest, in this season. And we'll see how he comes back from full strength. He's definitely had an injury-prone career, to say the least. He's just had a ton of injuries, and it's unfortunate because it could be what's separating him from being a top NBA player from possibly the top NBA player, because we all know he's that talented. And it's going to be interesting to see how the Lakers handle this, because we know LeBron and all the other Lakers are certainly capable of going out there every night and giving it 100% and going out and trying to win the games. But the Lakers are going to be in the playoffs, and we've seen LeBron do this several times before, where they take it like 80% in the regular season. They beat the teams they should beat, but then the good teams, they win some, and then they lose some. And they don't exactly get the best seeding. Like, we remember the Cavs team got the 4 seed, ended up playing the Pacers in the first round, were able to beat them, ended up going on to win the Eastern Conference Finals anyways. So we'll see where the Lakers stand, because it's not going to be as easy to do that in a much more talented Western Conference. But the Lakers still have LeBron James. They still have Dennis Schroeder. They still have Montrezl Harrell. They still have Marc Gasol. So they have a bunch of
KCP.
They still have a bunch of big guys along with some talented shooters. And I'll throw in KCP, and Kyle Kuzma's been playing well this year too.
Kuzma's playing really well.
Yeah, and the people who are talking about how Kuz was a bum were just idiots and haters. So I think that's Ryan. But
I know that's one guy I've not hated on. I have not hated on Kyle Kuzma. I have hated on Lonzo Ball. I will admit that. Not Kyle Kuzma.
Dude, CO2, he's about to take off, so don't doubt. The Lakers will be fine. They'll be a playoff team.
He said the same thing about his rap career. About to take off.
Yeah, I know. That was the reference, Ryan.
NBA player, not a rapper. So this is a situation where you have to look to previous injuries. You have to look to Kevin Durant and the Warriors. Take it with extreme caution. Anything with a calf strain, that's what it was for him. That's connected to your Achilles. So you have to be extremely careful, because the original diagnosis was Achilles tendinosis. Anything with that A word, you have to be so careful with. You can never rush him back. I'd say if they think the ideal window is 2 to 3 weeks, or 2 to 3 weeks till he's reevaluated, you reevaluate multiple times, and you even add another 2 weeks, because you know the team is going to continue to win. Yes, their seeding's going to be affected. Utah surpassed them as the 1 seed in the West. That's okay, because ultimately, if you're going to ask me who I'm taking, the Lakers or the Jazz, it's not to discredit or laugh at what they've done. The Jazz have been incredible, huge surprise. I'm taking the Lakers every single time, and they know that. LeBron knows that. I like the point that Don mentioned as far as him. He can kind of coast sometimes in the regular season. You look at his numbers and how much of an MVP candidate is, and you think that's not the case. But if you really watch, that is what he's been known for doing, especially with Cleveland. I think the same thing can be done with LA. Be very cautious. Make sure you take as much time as possible so that you get a healthy AD. Because without him, that Brooklyn Nets team out of the East is going to look a whole lot scarier. So you're going to need him if you're going to have a chance at that championship.
I agree. You got to take this as cautious as you can possibly be. Even if AD thinks he is ready to go, it is on your trainers to say, no, you're not, or yes, he is. They have to be careful. Even if he says he's ready to go, you have to be the bearer of bad news and say, you cannot play, and you will not play. You don't want a Kevin Durant type injury to happen to a top player in the NBA. They got to be careful and make sure he's ready to go. Even if he misses some time in the regular season, it's worth it to have him in the playoffs where they can go back to back. Next up, Blake Griffin. His time could be done in Detroit, as both sides have agreed for him to sit out until they figure out what they're going to do. Do you guys think he's going to get traded, or could you guys see more of a buyout
I don't know. I think that he has some trade value, especially possibly to a team like the Lakers, who just lost Anthony Davis, could be looking for some big man depth. So Blake Griffin, he's still a talented player, obviously not the type of guy he was back in Los Angeles, obviously for the Clippers instead of the Lakers. And Andre Drummond got put in the same situation in Cleveland. They're sitting him out until they can trade him too. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but I think Blake Griffin has enough value for a team to offer some picks for.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree that there's some value there. Blake Griffin's not what he used to be. He's another one of those guys that a lot of injuries have taken a toll on him. And, you really saw him regress. He hasn't been the same since the Clippers. That was back in his prime. That was back with Lob City when that team was very exciting. Of course, historically known for never getting past the second round. But they were a very fun team to watch. He was a big part of it. And he was that guy over there. So I don't see that being the case now. I ultimately think that he will probably be traded. They're not going to utilize his minutes. They're going to try and look to get rid of him. I think that ultimately, if you're a Detroit fan, just don't ask for a lot because you're not going to get much for him, but he will be sent off somewhere who wants a big man to improve that depth.
You're right, Parker. He's not the same guy that he has been or was. He's over the hump in his career, but he can still serve as a valuable depth piece on a contending team. And I think the Lakers could make a run at him with the news of Anthony Davis. And you know what? That could be good for their depth. I think that he still has something in the tank to where he can be a serviceable piece from off of the bench in the playoffs. So I think that is in the best interest for a contending team to try to acquire him. Last topic of the night, Andre Drummond. Dom, you just mentioned it. Same situation with Blake Griffin. What team do you think he should be in on? Should be in on him, I should say.
The Lakers, too. I think they could certainly get him. Or a team like the Nets who don't have any front court at all. I mean, unless you want to consider Kevin Durant, but they were playing at the 5 the other night, and he's not a 5-man. I mean, he's 6'11", so he can play it, but he's not a very physical man down low. He can be. He absolutely can be, but that's just not his game. So Drummond to the Nets could certainly make sense. Maybe the Rockets, too, because they've been solid so far this year.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Nets that you mentioned because, the Lakers could also go for him. But ultimately, assuming they handle things right with Anthony Davis, he'll be back and they won't need him. But I think that with Brooklyn, it is a big thing because you want a guy that can get boards and protect the rim because DeAndre Jordan, like Blake Griffin, is out of his prime. He's not providing you with what you need out of him because if you're the Nets, all you want is rim protection because you lost that with Jared Allen when you traded him away, and you have guys that can score. You literally have a three-headed monster in KD, Kyrie, and James Harden. So that's what they're looking for, and I think that should they be able to pull him off for relatively cheap, again, because he's in the back end of his career, that would be a big move. They could definitely elevate their status and maybe value them a little bit higher when you compare them to the likes of the Lakers.
There are two teams I mainly see making a move for him. Actually, three. First one's the Raptors. They have been missing Ibaka and Gasol since they left, so I think getting a guy like Drummond could help their front court. Nets, Dom, I completely agree with, so you took them from me, but that's what they need.
It's an obvious pick.
Yeah. DeAndre Jordan is over the hump in his career. He's not efficient, and I think he would be a great pickup for them. I also like the Mavericks. I think if the Mavericks wanted to get a physical guy down low, that's what they need, and that's where Drummond could really fit. But the main fit that I really see, the Celtics. They need a big man. They do. Their best big man is Tice, and he's not that guy. He's not going to be that physical guy down low. He's 6'9". You can't have a 6'9" guy as your center when you're going up against these 7-foot-tall, strong bigs who are at the top of their games, like Jokic and Embiid. So I think getting a guy like Drummond really shores up and puts a nice fit in at center. So those are my picks.
Here, I'm gonna do my Tice impression. This is totally copied from Pat.
Oh, I can definitely see Pat doing that. I'm gonna make him do it next time I see him. Okay, folks, that's gonna end this episode of the 4-3 Show. Thank you very much for tuning in. We will be back next Monday, and we will be on this Wednesday and next Wednesday on Blaze Radio. Have a great rest of your week.